and I call the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It is often said that good legislation, like sausages, should never be seen being made. The Texas Bill of 2011 was never seen being made, but it's about as healthy for higher education as a plate of week-old snags. I commend the government and specifically the Minister for Education for bringing forward this Texas Bill with such deliberate haste. For he knows only too well that the strength of our higher education and research sector is critical. Critical to our high standard of living, critical to our competitiveness, critical to the sustainability of job creation and growth. However, after 6 years of Labor's myopic and misguided misrule, the higher education sector is in critical condition. This amendment is the first step in putting our country back on track. There is no reason why Australia cannot be the best country in the world for research and learning. I will speak to the specifics of the bill and later offer some of my own prescriptions for energising the research industry in Australia. I speak with the authority of being the only research scientist in this place and the authority of someone who has been involved in competitive research. Einstein once said, "Science is a wonderful thing if one does not have to earn one's living at it." Hence why I'm here. Firstly, the Texas Amendment Bill is designed to improve efficiency. The Coalition committed at the election to cut red tape, and this bill is proof of that promise in action. The bill will limit the Texas Authority to its core activities. That is, it will focus on provider registration and course accreditation. It is about time too, as I was stunned to read that currently there is no internal review of decisions. There is no right to appeal on a Texas ruling to Texas. Instead, any review, any appeal is directed to the hugely expensive Administrative Appeals Tribunal. This is indicative of a lack of trust by the former government in the people they hired to head up their ideas. Not only did the former government not trust the people they picked to head up the institutions they set up, they did not trust their own ministers. If they did, why did the Minister of the day not have the ability to give direction to Texas regarding its performance? Why did the Minister not have the ability to query the fees Texas charged, or even have a say? Labor has trust issues. The Labor Party never trusted the institutions it set up, never trusted the people it appointed to them, and never trusted themselves. I'm only too glad that the good people of Australia broke up with that Labor government. This bill, in this Liberal government, is restoring hope, reward and opportunity, and restoring, most importantly, competition. Texas needs to justify its fees and be open to market forces. I support the move to give the Minister for Education oversight of the fees that may be charged. The Labor Party never got the big picture, and the Texas bill is indicative of that. The bill detailed specific numbers of commissioners and specific full-time and part-time commissioners. Where is the justification for these restrictions and requirements? Perhaps it was just another case of answering the union's call and giving jobs for the boys at the expense of the Australian education sector. Well, as someone who is passionate about education, I cannot stand idly by while there are ways of doing things better in our universities. And while this bill is a good start, it is but a start. I want more because the people of Australia want and deserve more. Also, the world demands more from our educational institutions, specifically of our scientific and research capacity. I have, through some toil, refined some recommendations I wish to share. They are in the spirit of this bill. Our government must revise the funding regulation of universities such that the material rewards from imposing higher standards on graduate learning outcomes are stronger than the material rewards from racing to the bottom. It is vital that the quality of graduates is more important than the number of graduates. I urge the Minister to legislate against the use in any form of student feedback as a method or a metric of quality in teaching. The practice of using student satisfaction approval instead of learning outcomes as a measure of quality is demonstrably fraudulent and should be treated as such by law. It is essential that this is done in a fashion which cannot be circumvented by educational bureaucracies which originated and imposed this damaging practice. There needs to be a shift from central Commonwealth-funded regulatory regimes to a simpler self-regulatory model. Current regulatory bureaucracies are expensive and have produced no useful outcomes in the last decade, only numerous detrimental outcomes. This will be a saving to the Commonwealth. There is so much flotsam and jetsam left by Labor that just one repeal day is not enough. The Abbott Axe is the tonic the ignored research sector needs. The industry wants to axe the ERA. ERA, or Excellence for Research in Australia, the policy has failed. The three most accurate ways to measure short and medium-term research performance are traditional expert peer review and research appraisals, professional society standing assessments or grades performed by internationally recognised subject matter experts, and the number of patents and disclosures that are produced. These should be the only methods of research performance measurement accepted in Australia. Australia should return to a much more limited regulatory regime akin to that predating the Dawkins era and rely primarily on self-regulation and of research by universities, which have a self-vested interest in maximising the quality, integrity and standing of their research. This bill demonstrates that there is the political will and ability to do such, and again, I applaud the Minister for such. It is a fact that research collaborations between science-based industries, universities, CSIRO and DSTO have frequently suffered as a result of bureaucratic regulation, but also bureaucratic interference, typically motivated by the belief the industry collaborator should be exploited to an advantage as a source of funding, free IP and free consultancy advice. I further recommend that in order to protect our vital national interest in defence and technology, the following be adopted as a matter of national priority. In relation to the Australian Research Council, the distribution of research funding must be biased more on high-risk and high-payoff research than backfill research which does not yield a high payoff in research outcomes. There must be the maintenance of a sufficient diversity in Australian research to ensure that there is sufficient breadth in Australia's research portfolio to support national policy development, national industry and national tertiary teaching demands. To achieve this, allow researchers to suggest 3 people with requisite backgrounds who agree to act as referees to determine the worthiness of proposals where Australia has inadequate depth to allow people within Australia to evaluate research. There must be, in fostering cross-disciplinary and multidisciplinary research, which offers potentially very high payoff in research outcomes and which has suffered from the current policy of rewarding research stovepiping. A suitable model is to expand the ARC Centre for Excellence program. Funded ARC projects must be funded fully. This may mean that fewer projects are funded, but it does mean that the researcher or research group will be fully accountable for achieving outcomes without the fallback of inadequate funding. Fund ARC bureaucracy to around 5% instead of the current level of less than 2%. This will remove the wasteful bureaucratic processes that researchers need to undertake with their research proposals. Allow initial research proposals from experienced researchers to be much abbreviated, removing bureaucratic burden. Effectively, this can be plan on a page. If rejected, that's the extent of it. If the ARC otherwise has the view that the idea is potentially worth funding, then ask for more detail. Remove any research priority on issues that are politically hot, such as climate change. I know of researchers who are sceptical on the consensus of the consensus position on climate change, but still use key phrases to enhance the probability of winning a research grant. The National Science Foundation in the US contracts with universities to apply contingency allowance of around 50% for grants, which allows for indirect costs associated with a project. The ARC should adopt a similar measure for funded projects. There is a need to have more than one round of ARC linkage grants per year and create a grant for multidisciplinary research that can be funded by the ARC. We need to increase the proportion of fellowships granted compared with project grants. It is necessary to specify a minimum percentage of linkage grants that have to be new industry linkages as opposed to extant linkages. Finally, I believe my colleagues on both sides would do well to heed the advice from American zoologist Marston Bates when he said, "Research is the process of going up alleys to see if they are blind." I believe it imperative that our Liberal government remove the 30% outside funding requirement for CSIRO using graduated steps. This requirement distorts the research undertaken. I know of research undertaken where it is known to be BS, but the research is done simply in order to gain funding. Make this a gradual process so that natural attrition will cover any potential loss of funding. These recommendations are clear and consistent. Additionally, they are cheap to implement. The effects will be colossal should they be implemented quickly and fully. This TEXA bill points the way as to what is possible. What is important about this amendment bill is not the size of the change, but that there is change. It is not the speed of the movement, but that there is movement, if only an inch. Einstein once said, "Science is a wonderful thing if one does not have to earn one's living at it." As I said before, hence why I'm here. It shouldn't and doesn't have to be this way. Einstein also said, "Only two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity," and I'm not sure about the former. Let's do the right thing, and let's do it now.